I caught my parents living a double life. They have another family across town. My entire life was a lie, and the people who told it were the ones I was supposed to trust the most. My name is Morgan, and I'm 20 years old. I'm a junior in college, studying something I'm passionate about, living a life that, on the surface, seemed perfectly ordinary. I grew up in a beautiful two-story house in the suburbs with a white picket fence and a golden retriever named Buddy. My parents, David and Rebecca, were the epitome of the perfect American couple. My dad was a successful regional manager for a tech company, a job that, I was always told, required a lot of travel. He was gone 3 or 4 days a week, every week, but he always came back with gifts and stories of the cities he'd visited. My mom was the quintessential homemaker, president of the PTA, organizer of neighborhood block parties, and the best baker on our street. Our home was always filled with the smell of freshly baked cookies and the sound of laughter. We went on family vacations every summer to the beach, we had matching Christmas pajamas, and we had dinner together every single night when my dad was in town. They were loving, supportive, and seemingly devoted to each other, and to me. I never had a reason to doubt them, not for a second. They were my rock, the foundation upon which my entire world was built. I thought I knew them better than anyone. I thought I knew everything about our lives, our little perfect bubble. But bubbles, as I was about to discover, are incredibly fragile, and it only takes one tiny invisible prick to make the entire thing explode into a million pieces. The prick came on a perfectly average Tuesday afternoon, during a moment of mundane domesticity that would soon unravel the tapestry of my existence. It started with our shared family iCloud account. My mom had set it up years ago to share photos and calendars, a way to stay connected when my dad was on the road. I was using my laptop to back up my phone, a process I'd done 100 times before. But this time, something was different. As the sync completed, the photo application on my desktop opened up, not to my own recent pictures, but to a gallery of faces I didn't recognize. A strange woman smiling brightly on a porch swing. 2 young children, a boy who looked about 14 and a girl maybe 12, posing in front of a Christmas tree I'd never seen. My first thought was a glitch, some kind of weird cross-pollination of data from a stranger's account. I tried to close it, but my cursor hovered over a photo of my dad. He was standing behind that same woman, his arms wrapped around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. They were both laughing, looking at each other with a kind of easy intimacy that made my stomach clench. He was wearing a shirt I recognized, one I'd bought him for Father's Day the year before. The background was a cozy-looking living room, completely different from ours. The date on the photo was from just 2 months ago, a time when he was supposedly on a business trip in Chicago. I clicked through more photos, my heart hammering against my ribs with a sickening, frantic rhythm. There were hundreds of them. Birthdays, Halloweens, Thanksgivings, all the holidays I thought were exclusively ours, replicated in this other parallel universe. There were photos of my dad teaching the boy how to throw a football, of him braiding the little girl's hair, of him and the woman kissing under a mistletoe. Each image was a fresh stab of betrayal. My mind reeled, trying to make sense of it, to find an explanation that wasn't the one screaming in my head. A colleague's family? A long-lost cousin he was helping? But the look in his eyes, the way he held them, the casual, familial affection, it was undeniable. This wasn't a colleague. This was his life. Another life. A life he had been living simultaneously? Right under my nose. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine, the kind of bone-deep chill that has nothing to do with temperature. I had to know more. I had to find out who these people were and where they were. The search began. The digital trail was my first map. I became a detective in my own life's worst crime scene, sifting through the wreckage of our shared digital world. The iCloud account was a goldmine, but it was the metadata, the invisible information attached to each file, that gave me the first real clue. Most of the photos were geotagged, and they all pointed to a neighborhood on the other side of the city, a good 45 minutes away from our home, a place we had no reason to ever visit. I opened Google Maps, my fingers trembling as I typed in the coordinates from a recent photo of the kids riding bikes in their driveway. The street view loaded, and there it was. A modest but well-kept ranch-style house, with a different model of car in the driveway than the one my mom drove. But parked on the street, barely visible, was a familiar shape. It was my dad's specific sedan, the one he used for business trips. Seeing it there, a digital ghost in the machine, made the bile rise in my throat. This was real. It wasn't a glitch or a misunderstanding. I dove deeper, using the password manager my dad had once let me use, a shared family one where he'd stored his less important passwords. Inside, I found an email address I didn't recognize, one with his first and middle name. Accessing it felt like a violation, but the violation had already been committed against me. The inbox was a window into this other world. Receipts for a local grocery store near that address. Notifications from a different school's PTA, where he was listed as a parent volunteer. And then, the final, soul-crushing piece of evidence. A joint bank account statement. An account that wasn't the one my mom and I used. It was under my father's name and another name, Isabella. The statement showed regular deposits from his company payroll and withdrawals for a mortgage, utilities, and children's clothing stores. He was financially supporting this other family, using the same income that paid for our home, my college tuition, and my mom's weekly book club. The meticulousness of it was horrifying. He had compartmentalized his life so perfectly, two separate, fully functioning households operating on a strict, invisible timetable. The man who taught me how to ride a bike and helped me with my calculus homework was also the man who was tucking in two other children at night. The weight of it all was crushing. I had a name, Isabella. I had an address. I had the proof. But knowing it from a screen was one thing. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to stand in the same space as this other life and feel the reality of it sink in. I had to go there. The drive to the other side of town felt like the longest journey of my life. Every green light was a reprieve. Every red light a moment of agonizing anticipation. The neighborhoods grew progressively less familiar, the architecture changing from the sprawling colonials of my suburb to a more modest, eclectic mix of houses. My GPS guided me, a calm, robotic voice leading me toward my own personal ground zero. I parked a few blocks away, my hands slick with sweat on the steering wheel. I couldn't park directly in front of the house.
That would be too conspicuous, too real. I needed to be a ghost, an observer. I walked the remaining distance, my footsteps feeling unnaturally loud on the pavement. Each house I passed was a potential candidate, a possible source of my impending doom. And then I saw it. The ranch-style house from the Google Maps street view. It looked exactly the same, but more vibrant, more alive in the afternoon sun. The lawn was neatly manicured, a child's bicycle lying on its side near the front door. And there, parked in the driveway, was my dad's car. Seeing it in person was a physical blow. It wasn't a digital artifact anymore. It was a hunk of metal and rubber, a tangible object that linked my two worlds together. I ducked behind a large oak tree across the street, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. I felt like a peeping Tom, a voyeur into a life that was never meant for me to see. Minutes stretched into an eternity. I was just about to turn back, to retreat to the safety of my ignorance, when the front door opened. A woman came out, the same woman from the photos, Isabella. She was even more beautiful in person, with dark hair and a warm smile that, until now, I had only seen in pixels. She was followed by the two children, the boy and the girl, who were arguing good-naturedly about a video game. They looked so normal, so happy. And then he came out, my dad. He was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, an outfit I'd never seen him in on a workday. He ruffled the boy's hair, then wrapped an arm around Isabella's shoulders, pulling her close for a quick kiss before he opened the car door. The gesture was so familiar, so ingrained, so identical to the way he'd interact with my mom. In that moment, the last vestiges of doubt crumbled into dust. This wasn't an affair. This was a marriage. This was a family. And I was the outsider. I watched him drive away, heading, I presumed, back towards our house, back to his other life. The performance was seamless. I stood there, hidden by the leaves, until the house was quiet again. My world had been irrevocably shattered. I couldn't go back to pretending. I had to confront him. I had to know why. The drive home was a blur of tear-streaked rage and profound sorrow. The familiar streets of my own neighborhood now seemed like a stage set, a facade for a play I no longer wanted any part in. The white picket fence looked like a prop. The golden retriever, Buddy, greeting me at the door with a wagging tail, felt like a cruel joke. My mom was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she chopped vegetables for dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, a scent that had always meant comfort and safety, but now just churned my stomach. She turned and smiled, that same warm, loving smile I had seen on Isabella's face just an hour earlier. The symmetry was nauseating. I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit down at that table and pretend everything was normal. I went into my father's study, my mind a whirlwind of chaos. I didn't have to wait long. He came home right on schedule, whistling as he walked through the door, dropping his briefcase by the entryway as he always did. He called out a greeting to my mom, then came into the study, expecting to find me doing homework. He stopped short when he saw my face. He must have seen the devastation there, the raw, unadulterated pain. I didn't say a word. I simply turned my laptop around, showing him the screen. It was open to the photo gallery of his other family. The color drained from his face. The whistling stopped. The confident, successful man who had commanded 2 separate households crumbled before my eyes, replaced by a cornered, terrified stranger. He opened his mouth, then closed it, a series of unintelligible sounds escaping his lips. I watched him process the situation, his mind racing for an excuse, a lie, a way out. But he saw in my eyes that it was too late. The game was up. He sank into his leather chair, his shoulders slumping in defeat. He didn't deny it. He didn't try to lie. He just looked at me, his eyes filled with a regret so profound it was almost suffocating. He began to speak, his voice a hoarse, broken whisper. He told me it had started 15 years ago, a mistake that had spiraled out of control. He told me he loved us, that he never meant to hurt anyone, that he had tried to find a way out but couldn't bear the thought of breaking up either family. The words were a torrent of pathetic justifications, each one twisting the knife deeper. He admitted to everything, the 2 homes, the 2 sets of holidays, the meticulous scheduling. He admitted he had been living a lie, and he had made me an unwilling participant in it. He begged for my forgiveness, for my understanding. But all I could feel was a cold, hollow void where my love for him used to be. He had broken something fundamental inside me. But as he sat there, confessing his sins, a new, even more horrifying question began to form in my mind. Did my mom know? I left my dad in his study, a broken man amidst the ruins of his double life. The confession hadn't brought me the relief I'd hoped for. It had only deepened the wound. Now, a more terrifying confrontation loomed. I found my mom in the living room, folding laundry. The domesticity of the scene was grotesque. She looked up, her expression shifting from casual curiosity to concern as she saw my face. She asked me what was wrong, if I had fought with my dad. I couldn't find the words. How do you ask your mother, the woman who raised you, the woman who seemed to be your partner in this perfect family, if she was your father's accomplice? I just shook my head, tears streaming down my face. She came over and put her arms around me, and for a moment I let myself sink into the embrace, clinging to the last shred of comfort I thought I had. But it felt different now. It felt like a lie. I pulled back and looked her in the eye. I asked her directly, my voice cracking with the weight of the question. I asked her if she knew about Isabella, about the other house, about the other children. Her reaction was not what I expected. There was no shock, no disbelief, no denial. Instead, her face became a mask of cold, hard resignation. A flicker of pain, yes, but it was an old pain, one she had clearly been living with for a long time. She didn't answer at first. She just walked over to the mantelpiece and picked up a framed photo of the 3 of us, tracing the outline of my father's face with her finger. Then she told me. She knew. She had known for years. She'd found out not long after it started, when she'd followed him one night, suspicious of his late hours. He had confessed, cried, and begged her not to leave him. And she had stayed. She had made a choice.
She told me she loved him, that she couldn't imagine her life without him, and that this was the price she had to pay to keep our family together.
She had agreed to the arrangement to become a willing participant in the charade. All the times I thought she was just being a supportive wife, understanding of his demanding job, she was actually covering for him. All the times she'd encouraged me to go on a father-daughter shopping trip with his credit card, she was buying his silence. She wasn't a victim, she was a co-conspirator. The betrayal was absolute, a two-front war on my reality. The two people I trusted most in the world had constructed this elaborate, painful illusion, and they had dragged me into it without my consent. The home I had cherished wasn't a sanctuary. It was a carefully curated exhibit in a museum of lies. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't be in that house for another second. I had to get out. I had to see the other half of this equation, the other woman who had, in her own way, been just as deceived as I had. I packed a bag, not even sure what I was throwing into it. A few shirts, my wallet, my phone. I was running on pure adrenaline, a desperate need to escape the suffocating atmosphere of my home. I told my mom I was staying at a friend's, a flimsy excuse that we both knew was a lie. She didn't try to stop me. She just stood there, her face a portrait of sorrow and defeat, a woman who had sacrificed her own dignity for a twisted version of love. I got in my car and drove, not with a destination in mind, but just away. The city lights blurred past my window, a kaleidoscope of color that mirrored the chaos in my soul. I found myself driving back towards that other neighborhood, pulled by an invisible, morbid curiosity. I needed to see it again, not from the perspective of a child discovering a secret, but from the perspective of an adult trying to understand the mechanics of the deception. I parked in the same spot, under the same oak tree. The house was dark now, save for a soft glow coming from what I assumed was the living room window. I could see shadows moving within, silhouettes of a family living their normal evening life. I imagined them watching TV, the kids doing their homework, Isabella maybe reading a book. Did she know? Was she like my mom, a willing participant in this shared madness? Or was she like me, a victim, living in blissful ignorance, believing the stories he told her about his business trips? The thought of her possibly living the same lie I had filled me with a strange, unexpected sense of kinship. We were two women, connected by a man who had divided his heart and his life between us. Two queens in a chess game we never knew we were playing. I sat there for hours, just watching, trying to piece together the fractured narrative of my own life. I thought about all the times my dad had missed a school play or a birthday dinner. He wasn't at a conference. He was at another school play, another birthday dinner. I thought about all the times my mom had seemed distant, lost in thought. She wasn't just daydreaming, she was managing the logistics of her husband's double life. Every memory was now tainted, rewritten with this new horrific context. The foundation of my identity, built on the bedrock of my family, had turned to quicksand. I was no longer a daughter from a happy home. I was a secret, a compartment, a part of a life that was only real 3 or 4 days a week. I had to know. I had to know if Isabella was a villain or a fellow victim. The only way to find out was to talk to her. But as I sat there, wrestling with the decision, I saw a pair of headlights turn the corner. It was my dad's car. He was back. He was ending his day with them before he would presumably start his day with us tomorrow. The seamless, horrifying efficiency of it all was too much to bear. I knew I couldn't confront her tonight. I wasn't ready. But I knew I had to do something. I had to break the cycle. I didn't sleep that night. I drove around the city, the neon signs of diners and motels a blurry, meaningless procession. I was a ghost haunting the margins of my own life. As the sun began to rise, casting a pale gray light over the waking city, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be a pawn in their game anymore. I wasn't going to be a secret. I drove back to my parents' house, not to stay, but to get one last thing. I walked in, ignoring my mother's questioning gaze from the kitchen, and went to my dad's study. He was asleep in his chair, a half-empty glass of whiskey on the desk beside him. He looked old, defeated. I felt a pang of something, a ghost of the love I once felt for him, but it was quickly extinguished by the cold, hard reality of his betrayal. I didn't wake him. I simply picked up his tablet, which was unlocked on the desk. I found the photo gallery, the one that had started this whole nightmare. I connected it to a portable printer I found in a drawer and printed out a single photo. It was the one of him, Isabella, and the 2 children, smiling in front of their Christmas tree. A perfect, happy family. I wrote a note on the back, just 4 words. She knows about you. I didn't sign it. I didn't have to. I put the photo and the note in an envelope, wrote Isabella's name on it, and drove back to their neighborhood. I didn't park across the street this time. I pulled up right in front of the house. It was early morning, and the neighborhood was quiet. I saw the newspaper on their porch. I walked up the steps, my heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and resolve, and slid the envelope between the screen door and the front door. Then I left. I didn't look back. I didn't wait to see what would happen. I had set the dominoes in motion. I had broken the silence. I had given the other woman the one thing my mother had never been given, a choice. I drove away from that house, away from my parents' house, away from the city that had become the stage for my family's tragedy. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in 24 hours, I felt a sense of control. I had taken my life back. The story wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. And my story was just beginning.